Welcome to the penultimate night of the folk club. It nearly was the non-penultimate night because for some reason we're not written down in the book. For the first 30 years it was weekly, and then latterly we've gone monthly. Just let's go across in G and see if we're anywhere near in tune. Well, when I used to sing along with Bridie playing, we used to decide, well, Bridie couldn't touch the third string. We could carry on, but she hadn't to touch the third string because it was hard to do. So anyway, we're starting our usual way with Kildare Mountain, and here we go.
Get the next way of
As he was going over. We started it in our coach house, converted coach house, which we rented, which was a semicircular room with the wallpaper going from one side right over the top to the other. And we had 110 in the front room one time, halfway up the stairs and everything.
Jacqui was living in this place called the Coach House with Bridie and another friend of theirs. And Bridie decided that she wanted to start a folk club like the Spinners Folk Club and actually do it in the house. So they had invited people to the house for this folk club. With Bridie, my late singing partner, she was Bridget Mary O'Donnell from Wrexham, North Wales. And I'm Jacqueline MacDonald, a Geordie brought up in Yorkshire, so Liverpool gave us an identity. We went to the domestic mission in Mill Street, and there we had lots of guests, and there was a stage part to it where some of the audience sat, and one night we had Alvin Stardust sitting on there. There was one song they always started with, Kildare Mountain, and I can remember Bridie almost doing a rap once when I saw them about what she'd like to do with Captain Farrell and his rapier, and it was very, very funny. Weekly we always made the effort to get back from wherever we were singing. It could have been Berlin or Boston in Lincolnshire or whatever, but we always made the journey. What I really liked about Jacqui and Bridie, and about the Spinners as well, is that they were nationally known, but they still wanted to come back to Liverpool every week and have their folk club. Whenever Bridie and I travelled for gigs, we quite often invited the guests back. So through that, we had Tom Paxton, who is appearing locally quite soon. It was the first folk club he'd ever been to in Great Britain. You might have someone like Harvey Andrews or Martin Carthy or Robin Hall and Jimmy McGregor. Quite big names would come along, and they managed to just about fund this. And then we had Phil Oakes, the man that wrote one of Joan Baez's most popular songs, There But For Fortune. And they were very true to the city, really, I think, in doing that, and I think that was absolutely terrific what they did.
I first met Jacqui when it was Jacqui and Bridie. I do believe that it was the Spinners Club, and I know they were singing that night, and I was very impressed because at that time there weren't a lot of women singing, especially women duos, in a club that was as shanty, military song, hunting song orientated as the Spinners. I thought that took a lot of courage to do that.
Jacqui in 1957 was in Leeds. She heard a band called the Weavers, an American band that was touring, which included Pete Seeger, thought they were very good, saw them in Leeds, and they said to her that they were going to be performing in Liverpool in a few days' time. As it happened, she was going to college in Liverpool, and so she saw them in Liverpool, and when she went backstage at the Empire Theatre, she met this very tall guy who was Tony Davis from the Spinners.
I paid a flying visit to my one and only love, as white as any lily.
With Jacqui, there were 5 Spinners. So there was Tony Davis, the big tall lad. There was Mick Groves, who was very keen on Ewan MacColl songs. There was Hughie Jones, who turned out to be a very, very good songwriter. And there was Cliff Hall, the West Indian, who was in the group, and he brought some Jamaican songs into the repertoire. So that was an unusual mix.
I dreamt I stooped and kissed her, as in days of yore. Said Johnny, you're only joking, as many times before. The cock crew in the morning and crew.
And you also had Jacqui in there as well, and she brought some songs in too, including a sea shanty that her grandmother had taught her, and Hughie Jones changed the words of that a bit, and it became a song called Champion of the Seas that the Spinners did, and in fact which Hughie performs to this day.
Anyway, we're going to do, I'll do Liverpool Lullaby for Stan Kelly, I believe, is going to give an interview soon. The man that wrote this song, and he hasn't been heard of for a long time. So I'll do this song all about growing up around the Liverpool area.
Well, of course, the Spinners were Liverpool folk. They were the Liverpool Spinners. You didn't come to Liverpool and talk about folk music without talking about them and Jacqui and Bridie. That was a long time for that to be going. And what was good about it especially was that they located in Liverpool, they operated in Liverpool, and they sang songs from Liverpool, because Liverpool had a fantastic repertoire and history of songs. So it was sometimes like stepping back into the past to come and hear the Spinners. It was like stepping into someone else's family to come here.
The last time I saw Stan Kelly was in San Francisco Folk Club. Bridie and I were the booked artists, and it was dimly lit, as most folk clubs used to be. And we launched forth into Liverpool Lullaby. Of course, it's so old-fashioned, that song now, when you sing it. Well, you've got to be careful as you sing it now, because it talks about giving the kiddies a little tap if they're about to run under a bus or something, awkward like that. And in the dim light, I could see a chap on the front row sort of crying. And I thought, we're probably not doing so well tonight. I'll try and lighten things a bit. Anyway, when the lights came up in the interval, it was Stan Kelly, the writer of the song. And he was feeling, very emotionally moved.
Else can take your place, so go to sleep for your honey.
And Jacqui decided to leave the Spinners and team up with Bridie and become a duo. And they became a very, very effective duo indeed.
And as usual, make time bloody late, 60 years down.
The people around the area had come along to it, and the charge for admission would be pretty small. I mean, you've still got it now with the Bothy Folk Club in Southport, where you have just the house singers singing one week. So you have the main people performing, like Jacqui and Bridie, and some regular people who came along every week and performed. And then every other week, you'd have a folk name coming along.
Then we had Peggy Seeger and Ewan McCall, and all the people that were well known at the time came to the folk club.
And smiling Joker's face. And when I drown in old...
And the Willie Russell, of course, came along to see what was going on. And I kid myself that he met his wife in our folk club. Annie Russell sang with her two brothers, and then they got together, and look what happened then.
Jake Thackeray, who was very popular in those days, he did some brilliantly incisive songs, almost like a sort of modern-day Noel Coward. Wonderful songs, and he went down very well there because he was funny, and they loved funny people at Jacqui and Bridie's club.
And peace that we were fighting for, into stupid, senseless war, so it couldn't happen to our kids. Well, old friend, it did.
It's rather amusing, I think, that they were signed to Major Minor Records at some stage, because Major Minor Records was connected with Radio Caroline. And this means that these very hip, powered radio stations were being told to play Major Minor Records. And so you often heard Jacqui and Bridie tracks amidst all the rock and roll of the day, and that was wonderful.
Because we were in Mill Street, which is sort of suburb of Liverpool, we got the people from the environ of there, including a man who used to work on the docks, Arthur the poet, we called him, and he began to make comments about what he saw through the folk club. He sort of, I think it broadened his world a little bit.
And there's a lovely track on one of the Major Minor albums which was written by their docker friend Arthur. Arthur Williams was a docker who wrote poetry, and he would be at Jacqui and Bridie's club every week reading a couple of his poems, and they were very funny indeed.
You know, Lord Derby, who lived out in Knowsley, was counting his money one night. He said to himself, as all lords do, why? You can treble that world if you like. Remember the best time you ever had when you were a kid of 2. He thought to himself, as all lords do, why? 'Twas when I was at Chester Zoo, so I'll build a zoo, a safari park. At Knowsley it's something I like, and the people of Liverpool will flock in their thousands at weekends or when they're on strike. You know, he sort of did things like that, and he made nicknames of the dockers, and these were people that came along and from the floor did things. So one of his nicknames was, there was one docker, they always called him the drug addict. They said, why do you call him that? They said, well, he used to say, when you've done that, lads, have more for you.
What I liked about Jacqui and Bridie was that they sang Liverpool songs, they sang Irish songs, they sang all sorts of songs, but they did them with a lot of humour and a lot of jokes, a lot of bad jokes.
You know, if there was a topic we were doing, for instance, Paddy's Market or Mary Ellen, and we didn't think there was any music, we wrote the song.
But with Jacqui and Bridie's club, they were actually quite near a pub. So there was a danger that when they had an interval, they'd lose some of the audience to the pub, or they might even lose a guest performance to the pub. That was the biggest danger, of course.
She's a Mary Ellen, lives down St. Domingo way. She wears a linsey petticoat and a Shannon shawl so gay. It's not very easy to say Shannon shawl if you haven't had 3 or 4 little drinks. You know, that helps things along. Shannon shawl is difficult.
You'd think today that kids today, if they heard of a folk club, they wouldn't think of going to it if it wasn't licensed. But in those days, the Cavern, the beat clubs, you know, very few were licensed really, and people didn't mind. They went for the music, and that was a good thing about it.
I actually live in Ireland in a place called County Donegal. I'm a touring band full time. The Nathan Carter show we call it, you know, and we'll be playing in Ireland, UK, and we're also doing a tour of Australia next year. That's the reason why I class my music as folk, country, and Irish. It's all a mixture of a lot of stuff. I've been coming to the club, I think since about the age of 7. I would have, in our house, we would have had folk music on and Irish music on for years. You know, it's a typical folk club. People come, sing along, tell a few stories, tell a few jokes, and basically just have good nights, fun, and share the love of songs and the love of music. But Jacqui is an extraordinary person. And she does so much for folk music and bringing young people into the music as well and introducing them and giving them a chance like she did with herself. And I think if it wasn't for the likes of her and Bridie as well, if it wasn't for the likes of them too, folk music probably would not be as popular as what it was and what it is. I've kissed the girls and I've left them crying. Stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. Travelled hard.
It's always been very nice meeting them. They are very, I speak of Bridie as in the present because that's the way I speak of friends who've died. It was, you could make immediate contact. There was no formality, no hierarchy of any sort, it was a nice aura, as they say these days.
Yes, it's 92 she died, so sort of got used to it a bit. I stopped because I'd stood next to someone for over 25 years, and I couldn't bear that there was no one there, so I stopped altogether. But then friends said, well, why don't you sing a bit more? So I'm still doing it, a few years on. I always think of things in a light-hearted way. It's probably because I'm really quite sad inside. But my aunt used to say, kiss me on the top lip, my bottom sore. But, I mean, I'm from that kind of background, and I will feel really that I'm just turning a corner. And I will have done that and enjoyed it thoroughly and given me a reason for being and all that kind of stuff. But I'm turning round to another thing.
From his lips, and Bessie Braddock on his voting slips. What was his calling? Did he have a trade? I had the plumbing lads, his living maid.
We once made a record called Jacqui and Bridie, How Can You Keep From Singing? How Can You Keep From Singing? That's a Pete Seeger song. But some people used to call it, How Can You Keep Them From Singing? Well, he can't keep me from singing.
Sweat and tears, and his life was mortgaged for 100 years. What did he leave you in his will? A love of craftsmanship, I have it still. A moleskin wiping cloth and footprints to read. Some tallow candles and a water key. And will we ever see his like again? And does his memory still bring pain? So deep a grief that you know